For Keith and Melody, the newlywed months were spent trying to iron out their young relationship, figure out the meaning of life, and somehow pay the bills.
The first year we were married, we were pretty broke, and I wasn't working. Keith didn't want me to work. So we were living off of what he made, playing clubs, at proms, and, parties, those kinds of things where you go play, nobody listens, and real kind of bottom of the barrel for musicians. But we were doing anything to survive.
Keith's generous habit of opening their home meant there was usually someone else along for the ride.
Keith could give me a hard time quite often, but he was also this warm-hearted, generous guy who actually invited me to come and live with him when I was discouraged and broke and really didn't have any place to go.
He needed a place to stay. So he ended up sleeping on our fold-out couch, which, trust me, was not comfortable in our living room for a while.
And I thought, well, this could be a mixed blessing. But still, it was very sweet. And I said, oh, okay.
Randy's constant presence in Keith and Melody's lives proved to be pivotal as their spiritual searching came to a head. During the last half of 1974, an increasingly frustrated Keith wrote, "There's metaphysical Christians and Jesus freaks that scream, but there's no confused Christians like me. I love the goal so thoroughly that I'd give up anything if I were sure about the path."
Keith and I got to a point where we really started visiting churches and trying to, find a more traditional Jesus.
At the time, I was involved in a church group that was extremely intense and restoration-oriented.
We visited there and didn't quite like it, but thought, oh, these people kind of like Jesus, maybe we'll go back. But Randy had been telling us, why don't you come to this Bible study that I go to? It's just at someone's house.
I remember after one of our many heated spiritual discussions thinking, maybe he'd get a clearer picture of the gospel if he went to this Bible study.
Randy Stonehill was one of the first musicians that began coming to the Friday night fellowship.
We didn't quite want to go because we weren't sure we wanted to be Christians. We liked what Jesus said. We thought he was very cool.
I almost set it up like a dare. I said, Keith, look, I'm going to go out on the road. I've got concerts to do. I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks. You and Mel, I dare you, just go on up there. And you know what? If you don't like it, hey, you can walk.
I recall Keith and Melody coming one night through the door with a lot of energy, as they typically did, and they had driven nonstop from Riverside, breaking every speed law on the way. He thought it was the Lord's will that they be at the Bible study no matter what happened on the way.
Walking in, all these people were sitting on the carpet and singing worship songs.
Everybody was so crowded together. It was kind of part of the ambiance of that time and part of the excitement.
At the end, when Ken really shared the gospel about, how your sins can be cleansed and it cuts your karma, you start with a clean slate, all of that, you just start fresh and new. And he gave the altar call. Keith raised his hand.
At the end of the Bible study, I recall Keith and Melody, but particularly Keith, kind of cornering me. He asked excellent questions, thoughtful questions, but questions that were much deeper than questions I was used to.
Keith was sold. That was it. It was what he'd been looking for. He knew it, and he was immediately there.
And the next time I saw him, which was at Ken Gullickson's Bible study, he'd become a Christian.
I know you'll never lie, and so I'm giving up my pride, so I can receive it, Jesus. All I wanna do is receive it, and the heart in me can start with you.
Keith never looked back, convinced that what he found was the real thing. His radar locked onto a new target. Now everyone else had to know.
People use the phrase born again, and it's sort of a cliche, but Keith felt like everything started new that night.
I've never seen such a radical transformation in any human being as much as I saw in Keith.
He had finally found truth that he'd been searching for in his songs, that he'd been trying to get from his family and from the world around him. His hunger seemed more profound than most of ours.
Instead of songs about searching and what's it all about and where am I going, what's my life mean, they became songs of I know God, here he is, and it just reshaped everything.
The only thing it didn't reshape immediately was his audience. Many of the loyal fans who had been so attracted to his spiritual searchings were now offended by his claim to have found an answer. The usual crowd at the Blah did not know how to react.
This is when Keith was on stage talking about how Jesus had changed his life.
He thought, look, the church has enough music. They don't need my music. They've got plenty of music. I want to go out and sing to people who are searching just like I was.
His songs had to do with spiritual things, but never like this night.
He was always sort of an evangelist in one way or another with whatever it was, and now he became like just super evangelist.
So after the first set, I walked out. I thought, forget this. And he followed me out and he said, you know, what's wrong? And I said, I can't believe that you use this like a church. I was just, so we walked around the whole block and he, told me about how Jesus changed his life, and I told him I didn't want my life changed.
His motives were good, but there was no tempering. I mean, we were like 2 weeks old in the Lord.
That was the beginning of what I used to call Bible study battles, because it went on for about 2.5 years. My process of conversion, I think, was over that course of those couple of years, from when he became a Christian in 75 to when I became a Christian in 77.
Keith's intense personality and immaturity as a believer were a volatile combination. He realized he was offending people for the wrong reasons. Lord, he wrote in his journal, change me, get rid of my radical tendencies. Help me control my overwhelming enthusiasm. People get wary if I go off the deep end instead of showing them I care.
And I watched this guy just take this fast track.
He finally found the truth, so he wanted everybody to know what he'd found, and he came on heavy.
It was a wonderful thing, and then quite often it could give you an Excedrin headache.
And he even, went back to Randy, who had initially invited us to the Bible study, and started telling Randy how, well, you need to live your life like this, and the Bible says this.
He'd want to say, look, man, why don't you, live what you believe? I'm going, I'm trying. It's not easy being human, I'm glad it's better for you. And there were times when I want to say, Keith, they made duct tape in rock and roll for a good reason. And one of them is to put this on your mouth.
They had some arguments, too, that I go, oh, no, they're fighting again.
I know you mean well, but look, put this on your mouth, go to your prayer closet, and come back and talk to me in about 3 years, okay? Because I love you, but I just want to throttle you, And then I would look and I would see Mel, the sweet...
You don't get a lot of true friends in life, people that see you're good, see you're not so good, and stick with you. And Randy was that kind of friend to Keith, and he's been that kind of friend to me for years.
As a young believer trying to imitate Christ, Keith's forceful manner began to collide head-on with his desire to serve others.
It was kind of just like a bull in a china closet. The heart was perfect, but the actions were bad.
He was indulgent one minute and then ruthless on himself the next. And that's a difficult temperament to live with. That's like riding rapids in your own emotions.
People would get very angry because he was the head of the line wherever there was a line.
His zeal quite often got ahead of his own emotional and spiritual maturity.
Keith's friends knew that he was sometimes abrasive, but always genuine. He took the gospel seriously and had the audacity to try to put the teachings of Christ into practice. If that meant life had to become messy, then so be it.
'Cause he sends people to your door, and you turn them away as you smile and say, God bless you, be at peace, and all heaven just weep. 'Cause Jesus came to your door, you've left him out on the streets.
Just in the normal course of life, wherever we went, we were witnessing to people. And when we found people with needs, Keith started saying, well, here's a pregnant girl. She doesn't know what to do. Let's bring her home with us. And here's this guy we picked up hitchhiking. He doesn't have a place. Let's bring him home. And our house just started to fill up with people that we, just as a young married couple, were trying to help.
In my heart of hearts, I only want to serve, Keith wrote in his journal, to present the babes as mature men and women of God. I want more than anything to pour myself out for them, for Jesus.
And he'd win them to Christ on the street, and they'd come live with him because they didn't have any place else to go. A lot of them were runaways.
You know, there he was trying to have Bible studies and to help these people. It was kind of a mid-'70s version of a 60s hippie commune.
Keith was progressively surrendering more of his life to God, but his music career remained a huge question mark.
Keith had banged on every door in Hollywood to try and get a deal.
All he had to do is whisper in the valley that he was going to be somewhere, and it would just jam.
He's ready to go right there with Elton John and all those people, same kind of craft, same kind of skill, charismatic, powerful.
I sat with him through a lot of auditions. You just go in and sit right there, play for the record company executives, and they're either, thumbs up, thumbs down. I couldn't understand why he wasn't getting thumbs up.
He didn't need drums, guitars, backup singers. He just blew you away with he and the piano.
And the last big audition that he had was with Clive Davis, who was in New York, and they flew him out from California, and he thought, this is it. Clive Davis, so I'm at the top right now. He went in, auditioned for him. He called me up. He said, it didn't go well. That was a defining moment.
He had a whole pop music career plan, but God had told him he was supposed to be in the ministry.
He'd been wrestling now for a while. Does God want me to sing and make albums for Christians, or does he want me to continue trying to go out and sing to the world?
He didn't really want to do it. He'd been groomed to be a star.
And when he wasn't signed, he just said, well, I'm going to do a Christian album then.
He's brought me low so I could know the way to reach the heights, to forsake my dreams, my self-esteem, and give up all my rights.
I said, what do I have to do to sign you to Sparrow Records?
For Keith, it was like the end of a lifelong quest.
You really belong on Sparrow. He says, probably so. That's where my friends are, and I know the kind of thing you're doing, and I'd really like to be on Sparrow.
He viewed at that time Christians and the Christian music per se as, well, it's going to be really low budget, it won't sound that well, and not that many people are really going to be able to hear the message of my heart.
So I sat there and worked out a contract with Keith on the back of a napkin.
Once Keith realized that that was God's will, he got very excited about it and really wanted to do it. He knew it was God.
So Keith signed with Sparrow, even though he was offered, I think, more money for some other people. He was very good.
Of course, little did we know at that point that, God would use it the way that he did.
As Keith embraced the new path that was opening for him, he found unexpected freedom and a sense of calling. It was a time of intense chemistry and creativity.
Our house was really just this hub of musical energy. Everybody was writing. So Todd came over one day with, and showing each other what he working on. So Todd had this song and played it for Keith. Keith loved the chorus. Your Love Broke Through. He loved the music to it. And said, let's keep the chorus. We need another verse.
And the phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's Keith. And he's going, Randy, Todd Fishkin came by with this beautiful chorus melody, and I've been working on the verse melody, and you just got to come over and write the lyrics. God just told me that you're the guy, and he's just going to do wonderful things with this song, and you got to come over right now. And at this point, I was just like holding the phone away, going, it's Keith.
A really short time after that, Randy dropped in.
As I drove up into the driveway, I could already hear him. And the music room was down the hall and sort of like toward the back of their house.
So Keith sat down and played it for Randy.
He just said, Randy, okay, listen to this. Okay, oh, this is going to be wonderful. Okay, so what do you think?
I remember hearing this amazing music, and I just was like, I'm not sure what they're doing right now, but this is one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard.
Okay, just let me catch my breath. He went, yeah. Like, oh, Randy, you're such a wimp. Just do what you do, And I went, oh, all right. Let me hear part of the melody again. He said, okay. So he was working on the verse melody, and I sat back and I said, okay, well, what about something like a dreamer who was trying to build a highway to the sky.